Welcome to Careers in Accounting. Today we have Peter Rodriguez. Peter is the VP of Finance for St. Louis City SC, the soccer team here in St. Louis. So, Peter, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to join us today. So maybe you can get us started with just talking about how did you get interested in accounting and what led you to focus on that in college?
Sure, absolutely. So I went to college without really any idea of what I wanted to do. I took all of my standard intro classes as a freshman. English, philosophy, kind of all of those different classes, and kind of connected with accounting more than anything else. I think largely because I felt like there were right and wrong answers. It was a little more black and white, and at the end of the day, I knew my credits had to equal my debits, and it was a little bit more kind of easy to find answers for me. But really, there was never a huge light bulb moment of this is what I want to do with my life. I love this more than anything. It was just kind of taking classes. I liked it. I found myself enjoying it enough. And then kind of an interesting moment, when I was at school, there was an article in the student newspaper that said the Masters of Accounting program had a 100% job placement rate that year. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do after college, but I knew I wanted a job. And that definitely stuck with me as, okay, this is something that I know will be able to kind of provide for me. And as long as I enjoy it enough, and, as I took classes, kept finding interesting pieces of it, I knew it was something that would provide me a good future. And really, that was it. That was kind of what led me on the accounting path.
So I had a similar experience. I thought it was a very respected profession. I wanted to get into business like you, but didn't know exactly what part. But respected profession, thought the CPA credential seemed like something worth getting, and didn't see any unemployed CPAs. And I was always kind of thinking of the worst case scenario of recession and layoffs and things like that. So that's what led me to it as well. So similar type backgrounds. So you started after graduation, you got your master's in accounting. You started at Ernst & Young, one of the big four accounting firms. So kind of walk us through what you did at Ernst & Young.
Yeah. So started at Ernst & Young in 2010 in the audit side. And, really spent my time on a lot of different clients. Two of my major clients were Arch Coal, a coal company, and Enterprise Rent-A-Car. But outside of that, I had clients in a plethora of different industries. There was a casino that I had spent time auditing, a healthcare company, electronics companies. It really gave me the opportunity to see, so many different industries. The joke we always make is it was like drinking water out of a fire hose. It was so much information. They just throw you in the fire, and you have to learn all about these different industries. But it was probably the best learning experience of certainly my professional life. Because it forces you to learn things very quickly, but also lets kind of the advantage of it is it lets you see all of these different things. Similar to when I went to school, I didn't know what profession I wanted. When I went into the workplace, I didn't know exactly where I wanted to land. If I wanted to stay in public accounting forever, if I wanted to go into industry, and if I wanted to go into industry, which one? This was a great way to see, okay, I like this about this place. I don't like this about this place. It was kind of like a lot of very intense real life, almost internships. You got to see a little bit about all of these different places.
Yeah, and it's a great place to spend your time while you're figuring all that out, because you're not wasting time.
Absolutely.
You are just burnishing your resume. It looks really good there. So you didn't stay EY the
Yep.
entire time. So walk us through that, and I assume that's because opportunities came your way,
Yes.
and you had other opportunities that caught your eye.
Yep. Yep. So spent a few years at Ernst and Young. What I kind of learned about myself, and this is one of those things where everyone is very different. It was an amazing learning experience, but what I found was I kind of had a desire to become an expert. I
Mm-hmm.
felt like, and I say this positively, I was learning a little bit about a lot of
Yep.
industries very quickly. And while I enjoyed it and would not trade it for anything, after a little while, I kind of felt like I want to hone in on something and really kind of just become that expert
Okay.
on something. I didn't totally matter what exactly it was, but I wanted to find a place and really make it my own.
Sure.
So I'd mentioned, Arch Coal was one of my primary clients. One of their competitors reached out to me, Peabody Energy, about a really interesting role within their financial reporting group. They reached out because I had that, coal
Mm-hmm.
industry experience. And it was a great offer that I kind of felt like it was the right time to move, and move there, and kind of my career in industry followed that.
And as you mentioned, it's interesting because you get to know them, they get to know
Yep.
you, and you do find places that you would never go to work for because
Yes. Yes.
culture or the way they handle things. But
Yep.
there are places that you'd be like, wow, that's pretty interesting. I like the way they deal with things, and the industry as well.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. And as you mentioned, you get a nice uh, difference in work experience from the public accounting to now you're working at a or a public company.
Yep.
At the end of the day.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So you're not at those companies anymore now. So your career has evolved even further, and now
Yep.
you're at a major league soccer team, which is fascinating for an accountant. So walk us through
Very.
that. How did that happen?
Yeah. So the story kind of goes, I grew up in St. Louis. I grew up playing soccer. It has always been a passion of mine. And then when St. Louis was awarded a soccer team, I knew I really, really would be interested to be kind of involved in that
Mm-hmm.
project. And, what I could bring to the table was finance. I knew it was probably going to be a long shot to land that job. There was only going to be one opportunity. But what I essentially told myself was, I want to put myself in the absolute best position. If I ever have a chance, I want to be able to say I did everything I could. So I literally just went on LinkedIn, looked up all of the different Major League Soccer team finance departments, and emailed as many people as I could, just kind
Mm-hmm.
of out of the blue. What I think was the most beneficial piece of that was I was not asking them for really anything. I know people get a ton of
Yeah.
emails saying, "Can I have a job? Can I have an internship?" Reached out and said, "I'm not asking for anything from you except for 10 minutes of your time." You know, Most of those people didn't respond, understandably, but several did and said that they would be,
Mm-hmm.
happy to talk. So I talked to a number of people on the phone and just asked them what their job is, what are some of the things they like, some of the difficulties that they have, and things like that, just to be able to learn and have that, information in my back pocket. Um, I was fortunate enough to get an interview and with the St. Louis Soccer Club. And when I was going through that interview, I was asked, what have you done to prepare for this interview? And I mentioned, I've talked with all of these different Major League Soccer finance departments. Here's what I've learned. Here's kind of how I would approach things. And I am positive that that is kind of what ultimately landed me the job. They were able to see the planning side of my brain,
Mm-hmm.
the analysis, the work ethic.
Yeah.
I think all of those are what we've discussed, I think, my background, my resume, my time in public accounting probably got me in the door,
Yeah.
but that kind of going above and beyond, maybe doing something a little bit unique is probably what landed me the job.
Yeah. And now you get to go to a stadium
Exactly.
every day for your career. That's
Yes.
fascinating.
Yes.
I bet you never thought of that when you were undergrad.
Nope, never in a million years
Yeah.
did I think that, my job would be where it is, but certainly wouldn't trade it.
And it just goes to show you that starting where you did allowed you to have those opportunities and those experiences to kind of find your calling.
Yeah,
and so that,
Yep.
and I'm sure you have a lot of colleagues in your career that you've encountered that have done different things.
Yes.
Maybe not the same thing, but
Yeah.
different things that are that unexpected
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. No, a number of, my friends who have accounting degrees and maybe who I started with at public accounting, all have ended up in very, very different, unique situations.
So, in your current role, can you talk about a project or two, maybe interesting that you've worked on recently that
Yeah.
that would be good for our listeners?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, probably the most interesting thing that I do with my job is the salary cap
Okay.
portion of our kind of soccer team and our roster. Major League Soccer has some pretty interesting, unusual salary cap rules, and
So it's not just a number.
it's well beyond just a number. We could have a very separate interview
Okay.
that goes into all the details. Yeah, it's very, very complex, very interesting, but it's not anything. They don't teach a MLS salary cap roster course
Yep.
at school.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's being organized. It's being able to plan in the future, and being able to kind of analyze certain things. Those are all things that you absolutely do learn in school. Those are things that you absolutely do learn on the job, whether it's public accounting or private or any kind of job like that. And it's being able to take those skills and translate them to whatever project that you're working on.
Mm-hmm.
The salary cap, absolutely one of the biggest pieces. One of the most interesting things I do. But, we also are working on long-term planning for the club and for the league. In 2026, the World Cup is going to be here. That's going to be a massive inflection point for soccer in this country.
Yes.
And, we are all working together on what does that mean? What does that mean from a financial side, from a fan side? Those are very, very interesting conversations. Again, not anything that you learn specifically from school, but they're all these things that, what you do learn in your experiences, you can lean on them and kind of try to come up with the best solutions possible.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And on the salary cap, I imagine you have to convey that to a lot of the decision makers in the organization, and it can't be a yes or no answer. It's like if we pull this lever
Yes.
or move this way a little bit over time, it's going to ease things.
Yep. No, absolutely. There's a lot of complexity to it. And you bring up a good point. It's also being able to present that to people who are not necessarily finance people. A lot of these conversations I'm having are with coaches, who are not, do not have the business background that I do, but have infinitely more, experience on the player side. So we have to work together. We have to present things in a way that we can both understand we have this amount of flexibility. We don't have this flexibility. And it's being able to kind of have that business conversation between two different parties.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about the accounting profession as a whole and the difficulty they're having getting younger people interested in coming into the profession. How do you, for those that do choose to come that path, what do you think that their opportunities are in the future by choosing that?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it earlier, when I started out in accounting, there was 100% job placement. That was before these pipeline issues. So, this is just going to kind of move that even more to the extreme. I think as long as you're willing to work hard, the opportunities are going to be endless. The profession, the job is not becoming easier.
Yeah.
If anything, it's becoming more complex. It's ever changing, and we need good people to kind of fill these roles. I've had a couple roles on my team. They have been difficult to find, even with a job like ours that I think is, pretty interesting. It is still difficult to find. So I think, the opportunities are out there. If students can, think that this could be an interesting profession, it's something that you can grab, and that you're going to have endless opportunities. And the other thing, I say, especially to people who are, maybe on the fence on what they want to major in, if you get an accounting degree, you can get a job in so many different business sectors. If you don't get an accounting degree, you cannot get an accounting job.
Yep.
So, I kind of feel like it's one of those, if you're like me, you like business in general, but I don't know, is that accounting? Is that finance? Is that analytics? All great options. If you get an accounting degree, you're leaving all of those doors still open.
Yes, absolutely. You mentioned one thing that I found interesting is, as you get older, you tend to think about the roles that people play, and sometimes you mix the person and the role. But I'm sure that soccer team is aiming to be there a lot longer than you're willing to perform your role. So someone else has to take your position, and that's a very cool profession. And so I think the same thing for accounting firms and the partners and the leaders of those firms is that complexity and that need from the business community is always going to be there. So who is going to come into that role and take over those positions and move it forward?
Yeah. Finance is never going to go away.
So let's talk a little bit about work-life flexibility, because I think that is a misnomer in public accounting, and if people are working inordinate a number of hours during busy season and don't get to have a life outside of the office. How do you have a family, you have other responsibilities besides to your employer. How do you handle work-life balance?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think my work-life balance is fantastic. I joke, I'm here 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday. That goes to show, what work-life balance I have. I have 3 young daughters. I help coach all of their soccer teams. So that means some days I'm leaving early, some days I'm working from different places. These are all absolute, opportunities. They're not, not really anything that I have to run by people. What I always tell kind of students is that may not be the case day one when you walk into your very first job. You do have to earn that trust. You have to earn kind of that, they know that you're going to be a hard worker. But once you have earned that, what I found is people trust their team. People trust their talent. If you have proven yourself, you will be able to have a very, very good work-life balance. Now, will there be times where you have to work hard and potentially, a lot? Of course. You're going to find that in absolutely any job, any profession. But the idea of, public accounting busy season where you're spending the night at the client, it was never the case for me. I don't see that being the case these days. And if anything, I see the pendulum swinging even more to the work-life balance side. My previous job before this one, I was at Edward Jones, and within the financial reporting group for a while, the directive was, we can't work from home. We just can't. Kind of how we work, we all need to be, exactly. We all need to be in person 5 days a week. Fast forward to March 2020, we all go home. We all have to figure it out. And you know what? We did. And it was fine. We figured it out. We worked through it. And now I still have friends over there. they have a lot more work-life flexibility of some of them might be 100% remote. Some may be hybrid. Some may choose, I like being in the office 5 days a week. I have found, through various reasons that, that is becoming much easier for people to kind of find the right work-life balance that works for them.
Yeah. And you mentioned the pandemic. Pre-pandemic, we were talking about, remember when someone would tell you that, oh, I'm not feeling well, I'm going to work from home. You automatically, in your
knew what that
mind,
meant.
you're sitting on the couch,
Yeah.
just taking it easy. Whereas now it's just, no, that's fine.
Yeah.
I trust you. Something's due next week. And however you want to get to your end point, that's fine. But we're all going to have our parts finished
Yep.
in the due time. So that's, I think, one of the nice benefits of the pandemic. And it's helped public accounting firms as well kind of spread the peaks and valleys amongst a larger population of workers, because they can pull people from different cities to work on accounts, and it's
Right.
It's expected now. There's a whole generation of people that have done that very well. So I think the moral of the story is that the work-life balance is overblown. Or I'm sorry, the
Yes, I know
busy
what you mean.
season, the number of hours that you're
Yeah.
working on an average week is overblown.
Yeah.
It's very, very manageable at the end of the day.
For sure.
Let's talk about compensation.
Sure.
That's a big issue for students.
Yep.
They see inordinate numbers of reports about starting salaries, and inevitably accounting is down on the list. It's not at the top of the list for business majors. What have you seen from not the starting salaries, because those are what they are.
Yeah.
But what have you seen in your own career, and maybe anecdotal evidence from colleagues and stuff over a relatively short period of time as to how one's salary can increase?
Yeah. I mean, really, I say you need to kind of look at it for a few years out. It's not, maybe that very first salary number. I do think that is growing and becoming more competitive, but really, kind of to your point, it's that growth potential.
Yeah.
So if you are starting in public accounting, your growth year to year, from what I found, is significantly higher than what you would find in most other industries and most other professions. And then on top of that, there's a pretty structured kind of cadence of you work this many years and then you're in line for a promotion. Yep. You work this many years, you're in line for another promotion. That is not normal kind of really anywhere else that I've seen. And those promotions, I guess, kind of year to year, your compensation increases are significant and healthy. And then those promotions are even more on top of that.
Yeah.
So within a few years, your salary is, at a very, very competitive spot. Continue that a little bit further, and it just kind of builds upon itself. If you stay at public accounting for, your whole career, for a significant portion of your career, it's going to just keep climbing and climbing and climbing. Yep. If you do decide to leave public accounting and go into private industry, we've all seen that usually comes with a very, very significant jump in compensation as well. Private industry kind of looks at your time in public accounting and, treats that as a very significant part of your resume. Mm-hmm. And there's a significant compensation bump because they know the time that you've put in and that they, can kind of trust you to be a hard worker, intelligent, know what you're doing. So really, I mean, job security, big piece, and then that potential of growth is extreme.
And so let's hone in on a little bit. The point where you decided to leave public accounting and go into industry and work for a corporation. I've been on that side when someone comes into my office and shuts the door behind them, and I kind of know what the conversation is going to go. Yep. But my experience over those years was that the numbers that the person was getting, the bump in salary, was amazing.
Yeah,
I mean, eye-popping. Yeah. It was not out of the norm to hear somebody say they're getting a 50% raise.
No.
And it's because of what you're saying. They're paying up for that kind of super master's degree that you're bringing to the table by virtue of where you chose to start your accounting career.
Yeah. I mean, and I remember from a very, very early stage of my public accounting career, I would start getting phone calls from recruiters saying, hey, we have this opportunity here and here. here's the salary. And to your point, a lot of the times it was, eye-opening.
Yeah.
It was a significant increase. And that's great. I would kind of say you have to think about your long-term plan, because you could jump at that
Yeah.
first one and make a big increase and then go on your way. It's about kind of figuring out when is the right time for you, probably
Yep.
most important. And then once you figure out when's the right time, then you look for the right opportunity. But yeah, you start seeing those, from a percent increase, crazy numbers very quickly in the accounting profession.
And I used to tell people, if you pass on one of those opportunities, you're not missing the boat. There are
Yes.
plenty of boats in your
Yes.
future.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
just be patient, and you're not missing anything.
Yep.
Last area, I'd really like your perspective on beyond just pure technical skills for an accounting student. There's lots to learn depending on if you're going to go into accounting, you're going to go into tax, but you're going to spend your time learning the rules. But what other areas could they focus on during their time in school that would help them, or areas that you wish you would have spent more time on when you were in school for the profession?
I think really, it's this is going to be a little bit general, but it's analysis,
Okay.
is a big piece, and communication. So, we're going to be looking at numbers, we're going to be looking at trends, but a lot of the times it's how do we kind of see that, be able to project that in the future. That's the first part. That's very, very important. But then it's how can you communicate that?
Yes.
You have to be able to kind of take this technical knowledge and put it in a way that is, easy for anyone to understand. Because, as again, going against the stereotypes of accountants of sitting in a room by themselves, that's not my case at all. I'm working with all of the different areas in my current job. I'm working with our ticketing team, with our sponsorship team, with our marketing team, with our PR team, all of these different areas. And my job is to be able to communicate financials to all of these
Mhm.
different people, all who have different backgrounds, all who have different skill sets, and I need to be able to tailor messages to all of these different people. That is a invaluable skill set that I don't think really is thought of very much when you think of accountants.
Yeah.
So that is something, however you can hone in, however you can work on those skills, I think that is a very critical piece to the accounting profession.
So look to take communication courses and
Yeah.
practice public speaking.
Yes.
I mean, it's
Yes.
amazing how just practicing that
Yes.
and standing up and letting people look at you
Yes.
while
Go-
you're talking
Yeah.
it's not you're not born with that skill.
Yeah. No.
Very few are. It's just repetition and learning to do that, and working in teams and
Yep.
dealing
Go-
with different people.
Going
and that
to
type of thing.
events, meeting different
Yeah.
people, kind of putting yourself out there in different situations that you might not be completely comfortable with. I think these are all kind of things that build the full person, and make you kind of more confident and better at your job.
And you mentioned that you deal with a lot of non-accounting
Yeah.
backgrounds and even coaches,
Sure.
and which is kind of far removed
Yeah.
from a finance perspective. But I always kind of thought of it as you don't want those people to keep you at arm's length, that think Peter says no all the time and won't
Yeah.
let me do what I want to do, or he talks confusing and I can't
Yeah.
understand him. You want to be able to be welcomed back the next time that the
Yes.
issue comes up, and they think Peter's part of the solution,
Yes.
not the no person.
Yeah.
And so that's what you aspire to
Yeah.
at the end of the day, and it just takes time.
Yep, for sure. Now, I'm sure there are still people who say that I say no too often, but part of the job. But yeah, you're certainly right that it's finding that balance and having that respect between all the people you work with.
Well, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your thoughts with us.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no, thank you for having me.